Hi, everyone. When I read about racial identity development theory, it really made me pause and think about my own experiences and how I came to understand my racial identity and how it shaped the world that I see today. So I identify as a white woman, but I grew up in a pretty diverse community. My school was also very diverse, actually elementary all the way through high school, and there weren't many white kids in any of my classes. I think that's where I first became aware of my race, even though at the time, like as a younger child, I really didn't understand what that meant, fortunately. But I would notice little things like teachers treating me a bit differently, or me not getting in as much trouble for maybe doing the same thing that other kids that maybe weren't white were doing. Also just given maybe more opportunities that some of my classmates didn't get. But as a kid, I just really related it to and thought it was just like I got good grades and I, for the most part, followed rules, and I was always helpful towards the teachers. So I, like I said, luckily didn't really understand race at that time. And so I just kind of related, my behavior and my academic work ethic to the way that I was being treated. But looking back now, I can see that being white most likely influenced how the teachers and the staff and other people saw me, even if I didn't see it myself. So as I got older and I started studying sociology in undergrad, I began connecting those experiences to bigger ideas about, systems and privilege. With that understanding really deepens even more when I started working in my field of social services. I firsthand started to see how race can affect the way people are treated, especially like in county services where, those resources are in place to help people, but they're not always, correctly helping these people. There was one situation in particular that has really stuck with me. A Black mother lost custody of her children, and she did everything, that the system and the courts needed her to do. She took her parenting classes, she got a job, she was passing every drug and alcohol test, attending all her family visits. But even after doing all of that, it felt that the system was still against her. The county social worker, the CPS social worker, made things really difficult. And I personally felt that it was because potentially that the mother was Black and the foster family was a white mother and a white father. And I just felt that, culturally they were cared for differently. And I felt that the white family was being deemed as more fit. So watching that happen has made me realize how deeply institutionalized racism is built into the systems we work in. I was in early adulthood at the time, so the sage Erickson describes as intimacy versus isolation. During that period, I was really learning who I was as a person, how society saw me, my own privilege, and it made me stop and wonder how I wanted to show up in the world and what kind of professional I wanted to be. So that experience really pushed me to speak up when I saw unfairness, and it made me want to advocate for these families who might not have someone in their corner. So learning about critical race theory has helped me put language to what I was seeing. Critical race theory teaches that racism isn't just about individuals being biased, but it's also about power and how the systems are built to favor some groups over others. And knowing that, I try to challenge those power structures in small but meaningful ways. And so for me, that means educating my parents that I work with, making sure they understand their rights and the laws and the process that affects them. Obviously calling out bias when I see it, even when it's uncomfortable. And I don't only focus on my parents, I focus on my youth as well. It's so incredibly important that our youth are aware of these systemic biases as well. And so they are, informed, they know their rights, they know the laws, they know how they may be seen to society, how they should act. And it's just so beneficial for both the parents and the youth to be knowledgeable on these situations. I also take this just into daily society. There's been so many instances over the previous years before I really got into this field of work and understanding, calling out biases when I see it, even when it feels uncomfortable, and how I'm taking that into not only, my work, but also just into like society in general, because there's been so many instances, in the past where you see things that are unfair or things are happening to individuals. And, I personally haven't done that. I haven't advocated for them. I didn't speak out when I was seeing it. I just saw it and I registered in my mind like, wow, that's wrong. That's not okay. That's not correct. That person, has rights, or they should be doing this and that, but I didn't say anything. And then I just find myself thinking back on it and regretting it so much. So I now make sure that I'm never left thinking like, man, I should have done that. And I just do it, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's maybe not, the perfect time to do it, I just do it. So if I could go back to that situation with the mother I mentioned earlier, I think I'd do even more now. I'd push harder. I'd ask tougher questions to the county social worker, and make sure her case was really looked at. My awareness is very much stronger now, and I've realized that staying quiet, even when we don't mean harm, can actually, continue the inequality. So overall, learning about racial identity development helped me recognize how my own, race, whiteness has shaped my experiences, and how it's given me certain advantages that I didn't always notice. But it's also given me a clearer sense of responsibility, which is huge, to use that awareness to help create a more fair system, for everyone. So thanks so much for listening.